Coming up, I'm filming this on Friday, the day after the local elections across the UK. So far we've only seen results from England, but those results are showing that the Labour Party have done extremely well in London, but in the provinces it's much more of a mixed bag. I think the unbiased view would be that the Tories have lost voters disgusted by the antics of the convict in Downing Street and the avoidable cost of living crisis. But the Lib Dems and the Greens have benefited from Tory revulsion more than Labour. So it's not so much that Labour have won as that the Tories have lost. And don't listen to the dishonest nonsense from Tory Minister and useful idiot Oliver Dowden that this is what you'd expect in the mid-term of any government. These seats were last contested in the mid-term of a government as well, so you can directly compare like with like. What's of more interest to me is that a Labour Party still fudging on Brexit and just about everything else has been outperformed by the pro-EU parties, the Lib Dems and the Greens. Brexit is still not done, and it remains a core issue, especially in the provinces. It's about time Kier Starmer dropped his ridiculous policy to make Brexit work. The voters are telling him they don't want Tory Lite. They want a radical alternative to the criminal vandals currently running this country into the ground. And that means addressing the elephant in the room. Our relationship with the EU. You know, that massive trading bloc on our doorstep. After a year of the Truth to Power channel and 1.25 million views, I'm now wondering whether it's worth me continuing to spend hours each week making these videos. If you think I should, then please leave a comment, like, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of new videos every Saturday. For now, because to be honest, I'm not sure I'm achieving anything. There are literally millions of English people out there still voting Tory against their own interests, despite a cost of living crisis, soaring poverty and homelessness, more food banks than branches of McDonald's, billions of pounds of public funds being siphoned off to Tory donors and cronies, rampant inflation, domestic and international law breaking on an industrial scale, voter suppression, the removal of our rights to protest, the nobbling of the previously independent Electoral Commission, privatisation of the NHS and Channel 4. And on top of all that, this is the government that brought us a catastrophic hard Brexit deal, with ONS figures predicting a 4% hit to the size of our economy year on year, a lowering of food and environmental standards, and a removal of our freedom to live, work and retire in 27 different countries. The laughably entitled Brexit Opportunities Minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg, recently said that the reason the UK government has decided to delay the next round of Brexit red tape by pushing EU import checks back to the end of 2023 is because it would cost £1 billion and also be an act of self-harm, in his words. He added, free trade is hugely advantageous to consumers, and went on to admit that the cost to consumers of actually fully implementing Brexit checks on imports would add up to 71% to prices in the shops. Or as Rees-Mogg admits, goods like cheese simply wouldn't be imported. This is the exact opposite of taking back control of our borders. Rees-Mogg is saying we won't enforce our borders at all for goods coming in. For goods going out, as a third country, the EU checks all British goods going to the continent. Hence the regular 20 miles of Brexit benefits to be spotted queuing up at Dover every day. So it'll be over 7 years after the referendum before the next phase of Brexit is done. And I doubt very much that these latest delays will be the last. Be in no doubt, Brexit cheerleaders like Rees-Mogg realised from the beginning that get Brexit done was an unachievable goal. But people like him with their billions of pounds in offshore tax-avoiding investments have already achieved their real goal of ensuring that no EU-wide tightening of tax regulations will ever affect them. From Rees-Mogg's perspective, he's used Leave voters. As far as he's concerned, Leave voters are the little people, the poor, the just about managing, the angry xenophobes and the readers of the tabloids with agendas set by offshore oligarch owners. And he's played them for mugs. He's now openly admitted on ITV News that actually implementing the EU withdrawal deal that his government was so proud of negotiating is a very, very bad idea. And still, these pro-Leave voters across many areas of provincial England are still voting for the Tories, at the very same time that British voters living within the EU are telling a study carried out by the University of Lancaster that they are embarrassed to be British after the unfathomably stupid decision to exit the EU. How unfathomably stupid? Well, Adam Posen, a former Bank of England policymaker, has been quoted by the American business news service Bloomberg as saying that most of Britain's inflation problem stems from Brexit. Further, he reckons that 80% of the reason why the International Monetary Fund expects Britain's inflation to remain elevated for longer than the rest of the G7 group of the world's major economies is the impact of the UK's departure from the European Union on immigration. Yet you mention immigration to your average Leave voting Brit, and they think of dinghies crossing the channel full of murderers and rapists, best given a one-way ticket to a repressive regime in Africa with an appalling human rights record. But the truth is, with a rapidly ageing population, and indeed a population that is forecast to shrink over the next few years and decades, the British economy is reliant on working-age people coming from overseas to pay taxes while tending to our elderly, our sick, our plumbing and electricals, and our crops in the fields. So the major impact of Brexit on the British economy is through reduced immigration from the EU. You see what I mean by voters being hoodwinked into voting against their own interests? That's what happens when the likes of foreign-based media owners like Rupert Murdoch and tax exile Viscount Rothermere of the top-selling Daily Mail have so much power to push their own agenda, which contrasts sharply with the interests of the vast majority of British voters. And in order to help cover up the falsehoods and pretense that leaving the EU provided the UK with any benefits whatsoever, the Johnson administration handed over £120 million to various bodies to stage a ludicrous and IQ-challenging Festival of Brexit. Remember that? The reality is that the Festival of Brexit was lampooned so often that the organisers have had to rebrand it as Unboxed. What a lot of UK voters don't realise is that Unboxed has been up and running for 2 months now, since early March, and no one has even noticed it's happening or is discussing it. A glorious, failed, great exhibition of irrelevance. Well, the festival may be irrelevant, but 6 years on from the referendum, Brexit is certainly not, with new disasters and negative stories cropping up on a daily basis. I'll leave you with this story from the Daily Express. Yes, I read it, so you don't have to. But you know the Express was one of the organs most vociferously anti-EU leading up to and during the referendum. Now it's thundering, Brexit fury erupts as UK firms move hubs to European Union. Chaotic! Brexit fury has erupted towards Boris Johnson, with some UK businesses moving hubs to the European Union and lashing out at the government over trade uncertainties around leaving the bloc. You know, this puts me in mind of something my mother used to say, and that would be good, if somewhat late advice to the Daily Express. Be careful what you wish for.